Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the manga as well as light novels as well as merchandise that I got for this first month of 2021. There is a lot, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount on this intro. I'm going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. First up, for the merchandise, I got a bunch of clear files for this month, some from Japan, others I bought from Taobao, and they are officially licensed goods but only available in China. So the first of those that I got this month is actually this and this, which obviously, for those who are familiar with these characters, these are the two protagonists from the BL series Classmates or Dokyusei. They're lovely, and a good friend, Twitter mutual Rin, she told me about these, and I had them in my kind of to get list for a long time, but I finally jumped on that late last year, so yeah, they finally arrived, and happy to have them. More Taobao clear files with another set that Rin informed me about, including two again, and this is Ash and AG from Banana Fish, and I really like these. They have like kind of a foil effect on them, and then also Yutlung as well as Ash. So these are a little bit, well, they're not as translucent as the other two that I just showed off. They are more opaque, obviously, because of that foil effect, but really lovely. And like with the last clear files I just showed off, these are the only clear files that I own for this particular series, which is kind of surprising because I do like the series quite a bit. Moving into the Japanese clear files that I got this month, I got a whole bunch of the free birthday collaboration clear files. So first we have Momo, which was, his birthday's the end of December. Then I also, that same month is Ray, his birthday, so I got those two. You can actually pre-order together, and they are released at the same time. And then the following month, which is this month, January, is Nicola or Aichiro's birthday, so his was available as well, and I just shipped all three of them from my Japanese proxy, so I received them all at once. And finally, for my Japanese clear files, more Kyoto Animation stuff with so they have a new set of I guess promotional art or whatever it is for the characters, and we know that I am a big sucker for free merchandise, especially art focused ones like Kyoto Animation loves to do. So they have a new series called On My Day Off, or hashtag On My Day Off, which shows the characters just hanging out on their day off. And so first we have Haruka, obviously at the aquarium, unsurprising, and then on the beach. So this is a two file set, and I also got Makoto, who is playing pool or billiards. I think the pun is obvious there, and then also at the beach. So these are not as frequent as the others, the birthday ones. I'm not sure if they're going to do the whole cast, but they have already put out pre-orders for Ray and Nagisa. I would presume they would put out orders for Rin and probably Sosuke, and possibly Asahi and Ikuya. I'm not sure about the rest of the cast, like Momo and Aichiro and the rest, but we will see. We will see. Next thing that I got was a fanzine, actually, for a series that I really love, and this is one of those series that is very popular now because of the anime adaptation, and I think has a really cool style. I really want to see what different artists, how they would interpret it. So this is the Devil's Advocate Dora Hedorah fanzine, which of course, like every fanzine, contains different art pieces featuring characters from the series. And as you can tell, really love the artwork that fans put together, the use of colors, and really capturing the style of the show. I think there's a lot of love put into this book, so I was really happy to receive it. Next is an official art book, and I was super excited when pre-orders opened for this one. I pre-ordered it immediately because I knew I would want it, and it is just phenomenal. It's pricey, but totally worth it, because this is a thick book, about 400 pages, really heavy, and that is the Haikyuu Complete Illustration Book. This obviously contains a whole bunch of Haruichi Furudate's color artwork for their sports series. Haikyuu, obviously, hugely popular series, recently finished, and this was just in, relation to that. And there's so much wonderful artwork in here. I'm a huge fan of Haikyuu. Definitely recommend the series if you haven't read it yet. It's available on Shonen Jump in the archives, and yeah, it's just all around great. I will probably be doing an art book overview of this book at some point, but yeah, super duper happy to have this one. This is an art and informational book that I got with a Kickstarter project, and I actually showed off the main items from the project in my anime pickups video, so if you're interested in that, do watch it, although it is very long, as is kind of expected for me at this point. But that is the Emma, A Victorian Romance Collector's Edition art book, which contains art pieces, but also interviews and setting artwork and episode breakdowns and things like that. It's a really good guide to the series if you are interested in more of the nitty-gritty of it. They really put a lovely book together, and as a fan of the series and of Kawamori's work in general and of this anime, I was absolutely happy to pay for this book. The previous DVD releases of Emma had some booklets and things, and so I believe all of the information that was in those booklets is also included in this book. And as you can see, there is a Kawamori comic as well as an interview in here as well. So yeah, lots of really great stuff with that. I think you can still purchase this on Right Stuff just by itself. Maybe not, but I do know that it was available for order for non-Kickstarter backers on Right Stuff's website. Next, we will start with figures, and I got a couple of these as well this month. So first up is the only Nendo that I got this month, and that is Atsumu Mia. So one of the Mia twins, kind of maybe the more notorious of the twins. In the anime, he's voiced by Miyano Mamoru, and I really love his character. I think he's great. I guess one of the always competing schools are seen as villains, but I never really see Haikyuu characters as villains in the true sense of the word. As you can see, I've posed him with a pudding because there is a pretty iconic scene where he has stolen his twin brother's pudding, and he gets really upset. So the two Nendos of the two brothers will have kind of parts to recreate that scene, or recreate the emotions of that scene at least. I cannot wait. I have also ordered Osamu, his twin brother, but that one isn't releasing until this month, and I don't know when I will get him just because of the global shipping situation right now. It may be months from now, who knows. But yeah, I've been collecting a majority of the Haikyuu Nendos. I haven't bought all of them, especially like alternate uniform versions, but there's a couple characters that I haven't gotten, like Lev and Yaku. Not for any particular reason, just I think I prefer to have sort of the quote-unquote main characters of each team outside of the Krasno group, although obviously all of the characters in Krasno are main characters. So yeah, this is just another of my Haikyuu collection. It is a 1/8 scale by Kotobukiya, I believe. And this is of Coco from Witch Hat Atelier. I love this figure. She is so beautiful. She's 1/8 scale. She doesn't quite, and this is something that people have noted in their versions or in their own copies of Coco, is that she doesn't quite, it can be a little bit difficult to pose her in this thing. Her foot doesn't quite fit, or it floats off of this where it's meant to be resting on there, but I was still able to get her hand on the ink pot and not without too much trouble. But some people have had some various issues with setting her up. Thankfully, nothing too major on my end. I just really love how intricate this particular figure is. It's really beautiful. I think it captures a lot of the magical elements of this series, and I just need to re-bend this little bit. There's a lot of different pieces in this figure, so it can be a little bit finicky, but that's not really a problem in my opinion. I think it turned out really, really well. I love the colors used as well. Overall really happy with this particular little figure, and she has a current home in the figure display case in the collection, and possibly someday down the line in the future she will have a bit more breathing room, so we'll see how that goes as well. For figures, we have a paired figure that I was so excited and had pre-ordered for months, and it finally released after a couple of pushbacks, and that is the Yuri on Ice Victor and Yuri Summer Beach pair figure. It's actually two separate figures, but was sold as a set as well. So we have Yuri, there, and Victor, who is chasing him. And this actually, if you bought the premium edition with both of these characters, you got a framed piece of artwork of what this figure is based off of. And if you also pre-ordered them together, if you got the premium edition where they both came in one box, you also received a scale of Makachin. So their sweet dog is also chasing Yuri. It's long-time viewers know that I already have a Yuri on Ice set with Victor and Yuri of the Toyworks editions. I really love those, but those are the characters in their skating outfits, where obviously this Good Smile decided to do a more casual, non-skating focused scene, and I'm just such a big fangirl that I'm happy to have both. I think Good Smile did a great job with this figure. I know people seem to always have complaints about Yuri on Ice figures. I don't. Maybe I'm just not that picky. I don't know. But I'm really happy with how they turned out. Although I would say that it would have been nicer to have nicer bases, because really they are just white plastic discs. And I feel like there was a lot of potential that they could have done for something a little bit more unique, a little bit more less standard, something that's feels like a, I guess, premium release, because this definitely was a pricier figure. It's a 1/7 scale as well, so it's a little bit bigger than the Toyworks editions that I have. I think it's 1/7 scale. Maybe it's only 1/8. I don't really remember, to be honest. But it's wonderful nonetheless. There's so much manga here. If you survived this far, we are going to start in the manga. So I'm just going to get straight into the standard size volumes. The first one being Yen Press's most recent release of Black Butler, volume 29 by Yano Toboso. This is the events in this volume are sort of a reaction to the revelations from last volume and a half, which I think is good. Personally, I thought that this series would be wrapping up pretty quickly, and we're definitely in the end game, but I feel like the way that this volume was structured and the elements that it introduced, that there is actually a potential for this series to go on quite a little bit more. So somehow, if you do not know what Black Butler is, this is the story of Ciel Phantom Hive, who is the Earl of the Phantom Hive family estate. He's head of the family. And so he currently has made a deal with a devil who has subsequently become his butler, named Sebastian. And together, the two of them kind of solve mysteries, fix problems that arise in the seedy underbelly of Victorian England, because as the head of this Phantom Hive household, Ciel is actually what's known as the Queen's watchdog. So he basically fixes any problems that may besmirch or ruin the reputation of the upper class, right? So the reason that he made this deal with this devil was in order to protect himself, save his own life, but also to get revenge on the people responsible for the murder of his family. And so they have an agreement that once that revenge has been done, that Sebastian will be able to eat his soul and yada yada yada, normal devil contract stuff. So this is sort of a supernatural historical mystery horror series. I really enjoy this series. It's not perfect by any means, and it is somewhat of a hard series to recommend because maybe it's just my perception, but in the past it's always been perceived as a show or a manga that's only made for a certain subset of fans, and I would argue that the reputation of the series has definitely been impacted by the fandom around it, or at least the fandom from the early and mid 2000s. And that isn't to say that certain elements aren't in this show. Toboso definitely knows her audience, and certain choices are definitely purposeful, but I do think that you can enjoy the series without being into shipping or certain characters. Honestly, that's me. I don't care about any of the shipping. I never have. I've sort of preferred to always enjoy Black Butler as the creepy mystery, sometimes action series that it is, and I find it quite fun. I will say that I do think that sometimes the comedy drama or comedy horror or suspense balance is a little bit off, but that kind of comes hand in hand with how the execution is, and it's never really impacted my enjoyment of the series. But yeah, Black Butler, I do think that if it sounds like something you might be interested in, give it a shot. I think the manga is much better than the anime, but the anime is very popular. I would recommend as well if you are wanting to watch the anime, the first season has an original ending, for one. The second season is non-canonical, and 99.999% of fans hate it. And then the third season is very, very good. It's a very close adaptation and is arguably one of the best arcs of the manga. And then the OVA and film is also a very close adaptation. And personally, I really love the film arc. So, there's a lot to enjoy there. But personally, I would say that the manga is the better experience for this series. That's from my perspective. Black Butler, I don't know how much longer it's going to go. I thought that it would have been wrapping up quickly. We're definitely in the end game, but the way that this volume is structured kind of implies that we're going to be getting several more volumes after this, which isn't a complaint. I think there's definitely a lot that Toboso can expand on. There's a lot of characters that she can explore a bit more with this, but I do think that we're probably closer to the end than not, but who knows. The events in this particular volume are a direct response to revelations from the last two volumes, which were not really a surprise, because it was something that was hinted at for a long time and a lot of fans had speculated on for a long time. And for me, it was kind of a relief. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was nice to have that confirmed, or to have it expounded on. And so I do think that it was quite effective in that, and I'm interested to see how that aspect of the story is handled now that it has been revealed. But yeah, Black Butler, I'm happy to have, and I don't know when volume 30 will be released in English. I know it's already been released in Japan, but who knows, soon, maybe. Next is a series that I think a lot of people have become more aware of thanks to the recent anime adaptation, which I will recommend. I've watched a couple episodes of it already, and it is very, very good. Captures a lot of the really wonderful parts of this series, and that is Horamiya by Hiran and Daisuke Hagiwara, aka Hori-san and Miyamura-kun. This is a rom-com about two high school students who have they kind of learn about each other's secret identities. That sounds like they're heroes. No, they're not, but they have the way they act at school versus the way they act outside of school is very different. And so when they are not in school, they kind of discover each other's hidden selves. That's maybe the better way to put it. And over time, or become friends, and later romantically involved. This is honestly such a funny series. It's also a series that really jumps into and establishes the romantic couple pretty early on, so there's not a lot of will they, won't they, and the rest of the supporting cast is also really fun. Here on the cover we have the student council president, his girlfriend, and I think the treasurer, Sakura, who are all, again, kind of major supporting cast and are also really funny in their own right. I have not read this volume 14 yet because I do not have volume 13 yet. I ordered them at the same time, but I guess volume 13 is out of stock or was on back order, so I'm going to have to wait to actually until I receive that one to read this one. And I don't know how much longer this manga is going to run. It is actually an adaptation of a webcomic from many years prior, and I don't know how much content there is left between the two versions. I don't see this one going on for too much longer, but I'm also going to be sad when it's over, but also happy because you know that I like when a series gets a good ending. If you're wanting to watch the anime, it is streaming currently. There's 4 or 5 episodes out right now, and it has definitely from my perspective, from what I've seen on Twitter and such, captured the hearts and imaginations of a lot of people. It's one of the better new series from this particular season of anime. Continuing with the rom-coms, we have the most recent volume of Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun by Izumi Tsubaki, volume 11, another Yen Press release. This is a ongoing rom-com mainly focused on the comedy, about a bunch of high schoolers, but namely a high school girl who has a big crush on one of her classmates called Nozaki, and after she tries to confess her feelings to him, he doesn't quite understand. She says, like, "I'm a big fan of yours," or something along those lines, and he gives her his autograph because, unbeknownst to Sakura, our main character, Nozaki is actually a shoujo mangaka and is currently writing one of the most popular shoujo manga around. So when she discovers that, she quickly gets involved with Nozaki's work and helps him, joins his team as an assistant. She helps draw the backgrounds for his manga because she's in the art club, and so it's just this huge, not only comedy of errors, but just so much funny elements to it, a lot of misunderstanding. So we have several supporting character. Mikushiwa Mikorin is amazing. Honestly, all of them. So there's a character who he's basically Nozaki's best friend, but that is who Nozaki has based his main female character, like the female protagonist, on, because he's so pure-hearted, even though he tries to be kind of a playboy. Oh, Mikorin, I love you. Poor baby. And then on this cover we have, what is her name? She's Sakura's friend, and that's her brother, her older brother, on this cover. And she's, oh my gosh, she's such a bully to one of the basketball team members. But little does he know that she is also the amazing singer that immediately sets him to sleep. There's a lot of crazy wackiness in the series. Also, another wonderful character is the princely female drama club member. She and her relationship with the drama club president is great. This series is so funny. Another one that I highly recommend the anime for, especially if you haven't seen it, I think is streaming on Sentai's platforms, and it's very, very funny. It took a little while for me. I mean, this has been out for months, so it took me a while to pick this one up, and I haven't yet read it yet. And so I'm hoping to do that sooner rather than later. But if you are wanting a comedy, also, this is a 4-panel comic for the majority of it, or the entirety of it. So maybe you have to be wanting a 4-panel comic, but it is so funny and really effective and just continues to be hilarious. Check out Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun if you haven't, and you are looking for a very effective comedy, you enjoy a series, or you don't mind poking fun at shoujo tropes and rom-com tropes, and it's just super duper great. Next, we start with the Viz standard manga, and we have another shoujo. This is Snow White with the Red Hair, volume 11 by Sorata Akidoki. This is an ongoing shoujo about a teenage girl called Shirayuki, who has bright red hair, and because of that, she caught the eye of the prince of her kingdom, and was summoned to the castle to basically join the castle, join his, I don't know if he has a harem, but it was kind of that idea. And she was like, no, I have things that I want to do. She wanted to become a herbalist, and so she ran away, cut her hair, ran away, and ran into the woods for her own freedom. When she's in the woods, she runs into a small group of people. They help each other out, and she discovers that this group of people, one of the members, the leader of the group, is the prince from the neighboring kingdom, Prince Zen, after hearing her situation, her story, he offers her refuge in his kingdom, as well as the opportunity to train as a herbalist there. As well, and pretty quickly they hit it off. This is a romance, so again, this is a series where the romance is established pretty early on. The couple is also established pretty early on, so it's less about them confessing their feelings and falling in love and whatever else, and more so about them together, working together, and problem solving together, and the trials and tribulations that they face head on, whether it be disapproval of their relationship or more unrelated sort of socio-political things. I love this series. It's wonderful. Again, another series with a great supporting cast. A lot of characters have a really strong character growth over the course of the series, and at 11 volumes right now, we are about halfway through, caught up with the Japanese release. So who knows when we will fully catch up, but I cannot wait because it's really good and continues to just be better and better. This particular volume, we see Zen having to so he's being pressured by his older brother, the first prince, to go on some marriage meetings, basically princesses and duchesses and things that are hoping to marry the prince. Obviously he's not interested. He's 100% wholly dedicated to Shiryuki, but thanks to a loophole, he does entertain one of these young women without causing too many problems, whilst also getting expectant lords and ladies and gentry off of his back by saying like, well, I have done this, but I wasn't interested. It's not going to work out. Also, in this volume, we see Shiryuki join the main, castle, the main wing building of the kingdom, which is a big step and causes a lot of gossip, but is overall handled really well, and again is just a transitionary thing for these two. It's interesting to see how that's played out, and it ends on quite a big cliffhanger where it's revealed that Zen's mother, the queen, is returning to the kingdom, and so I expect we shall meet her in due course. So lots of exciting things happening in Snow White with Red Hair. I love this series so much. Super happy when it was licensed. I think this series, people kind of stopped expecting it to be licensed because it was licensed by Shoujo Beat many years after the anime ended. And typically, I don't really need to explain it, but typically manga of anime adaptations get licensed at that point when interest is high, but obviously interest and people asking for the series had stayed consistent and encouraged Viz to license it, and I'm so happy they did. So this is one of my favorite ongoing Shoujo Beat titles. This as well as Yona and Not Your Idol, all three different. Not Your Idol more so than the other two, but very different series. Kaze Hikaru as well, but and Natsume. I follow a lot of Shoujo Beat titles, but for this sort of just straight up romance, this is one of my favorites coming out of this particular publisher, and yeah, really happy whenever there's a new volume of this out. So we have volume 3 of Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. This is an ongoing comedy about a spy who, in order to fulfill his mission, has to have a family, create a family, in order to get close to the son of a government, like a governor or something, obviously to steal state secrets. Little does he know that the little girl that he adopted actually has the power to read minds, and so she is very well aware that her father is a spy, but because she is so attached to her new life, her new family, she's willing to keep that hidden. And the woman that he hastily married is actually an assassin. She's a government worker who moonlights as an assassin, and so is incredibly strong. And the reason that she agreed to such a hasty marriage is because she didn't want to risk having the secret police called on her as a spy or as an enemy of the state, and so it's seen as so married women are seen as less likely to be, spies or whatever else. So the two adults have various reasons as to why they're in this relationship. They don't know the truth about each other, but their daughter does know the truth about everyone. And this, I love this series so much. It's so funny. It's just, it's really heartwarming and sweet, and obviously, this is such a found family story. I don't know whether or not, the relationship between Yor and Lloyd will ever become romantic, but you can already see how important their little family unit is for all 3 of the members. It's just super duper great and sweet, and this is one of the many wonderful ongoing series on Shonen Jump. And it's a Jump Plus series though, so it comes out fortnightly, and I've been following it on that platform ever since it debuted. It's so, oh my goodness, Anya, the daughter, has so many wonderful reaction images. She is basically a font of screen caps. Like, she's just, and Lloyd, all of them, they have just such great expressions. The whole situation is just done really well. And yeah, for as fake as this family is, we know how real it is as well. If you're a fan, I've said this with the last 2 volumes as well, but if you're a fan of like fake dating or fake marriage to real dating or marriage, then this is your thing. You need to be reading it. And it's just overall really wonderful, really sweet, and legitimately really funny. Really, really funny. Spy Family continues to be just phenomenal, and it was really a no-brainer for this to be licensed. I don't think it was a surprise when Viz announced the print editions for this, and I'm glad that it seems to continue to be so popular amongst those who've given it a shot. Next is a couple volumes of one of my favorite Jump series, just generally. Definitely my favorite of its sports series. Obviously that has given it away, but I got volume 41 and 42 of Haikyuu. I'm still waiting for a couple volumes before this. I need 39 and 40, and then I've pre-ordered subsequent volumes 43 to 45, which is the final one. There was a sale on Viz volumes, so I just picked up and pre-ordered the rest of these because this is, I love the series, and I had mentioned before that I was going to wait until all of the books were out to pick them up, but again, there was a sale, so I might as well have just gotten them then then tongue-tied today. Obviously this is the last arc, or the later parts of Haikyuu. If somehow you don't know what Haikyuu is, this is the story of Shoyo Hinata, this redhead here, who in his youth saw a volleyball game, televised volleyball game. It was the Nationals, and he was quite a short kid, and he saw a volleyball player, the ace of the team, called the Little Giant, and he was totally inspired by how he played, and it made him want to become a volleyball player himself, despite his short height. Unfortunately, all throughout middle school, he never really had the opportunity to play, aside from once in his third year where he managed to scrape together enough people for a team in order to compete in like preliminary prefectural tournaments, where he came face to face with prodigy setter Tobio Kageyama at a rival school. And his team is totally creamed. He's the only like actual member of the volleyball club, and so obviously things don't go well. But he did have so much fun, and he was just like so struck by Kageyama and so frustrated by the way that the game went that he swears revenge. He swears to Kageyama that he will beat him the next time they meet, or they'll be facing each other on the opposite courts or whatever. And so, middle school ends, he starts high school, and he decides to attend the high school that the Little Giant attended back in the day. So he goes there and is super excited to join the volleyball team, but lo and behold, who else should be there but Kageyama himself? And so rather than being rivals across the court, they are now on the same team and have to work together. And surprisingly, they work very well together. They complement each other very, very well. And yes, thus Haikyuu starts. So we follow the Karasuno volleyball team, boys volleyball team, and all of the wonderful characters therein, as well as in rival schools. I love Haikyuu so much. It's fun, it's funny, it's exhilarating, it's engaging. It's also a series that you don't really need to know the sport to enjoy. It's inherently just very, very entertaining. And all of the characters, especially the Karasuno characters, but even the rival teams, the rival characters, are all just so well done, fleshed out, nuanced. And throughout the course of the series, you follow Karasuno, but you're also following some of their main rivals, namely Nekoma, but as well as Albajosai and what are they called? The Bokuto's team, and the Shiratorizawa as well. And you just really gain a love for all of these characters, even though they are, you're only really meant to be rooting for one team. And so something that is involved with these last final volumes, the final arc of this series actually takes place after high school. So we see our characters grown up, right? Like quite significantly grown up. It's quite like 5 or 6 years after high school, which I think is really, really refreshing. The whole final arc, there's elements of fan service and where you see what all of these characters that you care about are doing now, but there's also a reassurance and a reaffirmation of people's choices. And something that I really appreciate with Haikyuu is that just because a character is good at a sport doesn't inherently mean that they have to do the sport the whole rest of their life, or especially not professionally, especially not with the pressures of competition, because some people just aren't suited for that. And just because you really love something when you're in high school doesn't mean your whole life is going to be that. And that was something that I think most fans really, really enjoyed about the last several dozen chapters of this series. Haikyuu is, one of my favorite series, full stop, especially from Jump, and I'm happy to continue buying it and completing it. And once I have 45, I will definitely be rereading it. Next, we're going to talk about the vertical, quote-unquote, small trim books. So I bought a couple of vertical books this month, namely volumes 2 and 3 of The Golden Sheep by Kaori Ozaki. This is a teen drama about a group of friends who were very close in primary school. One of the members, this girl, moved away in that same year or whatever. She returns to her hometown in high school and is hoping to reconnect with all of her friends that she was so close with in her childhood, but discovers that in her absence, obviously people have changed and things have changed, situations have changed. And I really loved this book. I think Ozaki is able to really show the truth behind growing up with this series. It goes in a little bit of a surprise direction over the course of the series, but I did appreciate it. This reminds me a lot of something like Anohana, so if that sounds like your thing, definitely check it out. It has that sensibility of a Mari Okara, that's the word I'm trying to say, series. So obviously Anohana being one of her most popular titles. It's short, done in 3 volumes, and I had read these 2 volumes digitally. I've owned volume 1 for quite a while. I just basically couldn't wait to get the print editions, so I did buy it digitally. Actually, I borrowed volume 2 from the library, and then I got volume 3 digitally. But I finally had the opportunity to pick these up for a reasonable price, and thus I did so. It's great. I mean, it definitely has that bittersweet element of growing up and adolescence, and I think it's a good one. It's one that will appeal to a lot of people, and short and sweet at 3 volumes. Another vertical book that I got for this month, that I unfortunately haven't read yet, although I will be sitting down to read this very, very soon, is volume 4 of Go With the Clouds North by Northwest by Akidoki. This is a, I guess, slice of life mystery thriller set in a magical realism world setting, and also set in Iceland. This follows a Japanese teen who is living in Iceland with his grandfather, and he has the ability to understand and speak to technology, and it's basically kind of a travelogue around Iceland, but also there's a larger mystery with his brother, something happening with his brother, and he doesn't quite know what happened in Japan, but his brother is now on the run and expected to show up at some point. I love Akidoki. I love her artwork. I think she's great at what she does. This is a Harta series, and thus I am obligated to love it, but even outside of that, I just do really enjoy this series. I think the Iceland setting is really lovely, and it's currently ongoing. I don't know how long the series will be, but hopefully not too long. Who knows? Ire's other work that we have in English is 7 volumes, so maybe around that length. If you haven't read Ran in the Grey World, I do also recommend that one, although it does have some problematic elements. but it also has this kind of magical realism and magical element to it, so definitely one for those who enjoy those sorts of settings. But I would say that this is probably the easier series to recommend out of the two. Really happy to have this volume and hoping to read it sooner rather than later. Start with the small trim stuff, aka the 7 Seas stuff. First off, we have Volume 7 of Bloom Into You by Nakatani Neo. This is a completed in 8 volumes Yuri about 2 high school girls who don't really understand love or don't think they can love. I like this series a lot. I'm not fully up to date with it, so I can't quite tell you my final thoughts on it, but if you are wanting to enjoy a Yuri and you haven't tried the series out, I do recommend it. It's one of my favorite of the genres and is wonderful. It has a bunch of, well, I say a bunch, it has a light novel spin-off as well, focusing on separate characters, and also an anime adaptation which got pretty good reviews. I have not yet watched it, although I own it, so I'm hoping to do that at some point. But yeah, if you're a fan of Yuri, or if you're wanting to try Yuri, I would recommend this series. It's just generally really good. I think it has a lot of diversity and insofar as representation in the queer community, but also I really appreciate the mentor characters in this one as well, and how it depicts a established lesbian couple contrasted to the teenage potential couple. I think there's just a lot of really great stuff in this series, and if you're wanting to get into some of the better stuff available for Yuri, then this one is sort of a no-brainer to add to that list. Is the next couple volumes of Sularun, The Girl from the Other Side, volumes 8 and 9 by Nagabe. This is completed, I think, in Japan in 11 volumes, so we are almost at the end. This follows a little girl called Shiva who lives in the outside with her teacher, or this monstrous creature individual called teacher, and there's belief that these black monsters, if they touch you, you will then become one of them, but she is the only person who that hasn't happened to, and there's a whole thing about prophecy and just so much stuff going on. And I don't want to open this one because I haven't read this one yet. It's lovely. This is such a sweet. I mean, there's an unnerving element to it. There's a mystery and tension that is undercurrent to this series, but really it's this warm found family, just sweet piece about two people supporting each other and making a family, or being a family maybe is the right word. And I love it. I can't wait to finish it whenever the last couple volumes come out. And Nagabe, I very quickly fell in love with their stuff. I also own their 2 single volume short story collections. One's just a general love story collection. The other one is a BL focused collection. And I hope that we see more from them in the future, because there's this, as you can tell, especially from the artwork, there's kind of this fairy tale or almost folklore-esque style to the artwork. It kind of feels a little bit like reading a folk tale, and the illustrations emphasize that. It doesn't have art style that that common in manga, which works really well. It's super atmospheric. It's just beautifully done, and I love it. I love it a whole lot. Nagabe is great, and also is really pushing the furry agenda, and sadly it's working incredibly well. I also really love their monster designs. I think they're very talented, and they know what they're interested in and excel at that. But yeah, definitely check out The Girl from the Other Side. It is phenomenal. It is the final volume of a series, and that is volume 4 of Satoko and Nara by Yupechika, with Mari Nishimura as advisor. And this is a collection. It was a webcomic originally, but as you can see is a 4-panel series about 2 roommates in America, one who is Japanese, the other who is Saudi Arabian, and a meeting of the 2 cultures, and also sort of the fish out of water element within America, sort of a third meeting of a culture, because American culture is very different from Japanese, and especially from Saudi culture. So it's Satoko and Nara are really sweet. Their friendship, their relationship is really wonderful. You really grow to love these girls and their friends, and you get invested in the people around them and the things going on in their life. This is definitely a series that was kind of, I guess, written to educate people, but especially Japanese people, obviously, on the realities, the ins and outs of Islam and Muslim culture, and especially, obviously, with a focus on Saudi Arabia. And I've said it before with regards to the series, I will continue to say it, but I think it's really refreshing to see such a positive representation of Islam, of Muslim characters. It does go into and explain some of the more controversial elements, a lot of misinterpretations or misunderstandings, a lot of the very obviously negative perception of Islam in media and in general consensus, and I think it handles that really well. I think also it does it quite respectfully in ways that, even though you personally or wouldn't be comfortable in how society is structured in some of these Middle Eastern countries, it is given a maybe rational isn't quite the right word, but there is an explanation as to why things like polygamy or having multiple wives is normalized, and how families deal with that. The idea of women-only spaces or men-only spaces, and why that is, and how under those restrictions Saudi people interact or get on with life, as it were, as well as something that really stuck out to me and that I was aware of but never had really considered, as of course the fact that the Middle East especially doesn't have any artwork outside of Arabic calligraphy, because iconography of Muhammad and other religious figures is seen as sacrilegious, and sort of how that's formed culture there. And it is really interesting. It's really informative for myself personally. And again, I've said this before with regards to the series, but I have Muslim friends. I do know Muslim people, but none from the Middle East, none from Saudi Arabia. My friends are from various parts of Southeast Asia, namely Indonesia, as well as other areas, South Africa. I have quite a few Muslim friends from there. So, and the way that Muslim practices Islam is expressed in those countries, and even in various countries in the Middle East, are all very different. So just because you know, like, one Muslim person doesn't mean you know everything about everything. So it's interesting, and I think it's nice to be able to educate, without being, judged or derided or abused. Educate on your culture and inform people about the ins and outs of your life, the realities of your life and your family and your country, and without people immediately jumping to negatives, immediately presuming things about you or your family or where you're from, because they've watched too much TV or been following very biased reporting, stuff like that. So yeah, Satoko Nada, really, really lovely, and I think 4 volumes kind of perfectly wraps up this series. It's quite a heartfelt ending, and it'll get, I don't know, it affected me. I was really happy, but also, like, sad that it was over, and really hoping for the best futures for both of these girls. For 7 Seas Manga, we have the 3rd and penultimate volume of Nicola Traveling Around the Demon's World by Asayam Miyanaga. This is another series that has kind of an unconventional art style. Again, reminds me a lot of sort of a fairy tale or children's book, illustrated, like, creepy stories book. And if you don't know this series, so this is an all ages manga. It's also, like, suitable for kids. It's also published in Harta magazine, and so even though I hadn't heard of it when it was licensed, it did catch my eye. And as you can see, it's also printed in, like, brown ink, not black and white. So it has a really, I don't know, unique look to it. But this is the story of a little girl called Nicola who can do a little bit of magic, who decided to travel to the demon's world in order to find her missing mother. She attempted to do that, but very quickly kind of ran out of energy and was in a bit of trouble. But she was rescued by a traveling salesman, demon named Simon, who helps her out and agrees to help her find her mother, if she wants to join him on his wanderings around the demon's world. And it's just a sweet slice of life, again, travelogue, exploring this supernatural world, and the strong bonds between these two characters. It's one of those series that I think is quite popular currently, with, like, this older guy and young child dynamic. It reminds me of Somali and the Forest Spirit or Forest Guardian or whatever that series is, as well as numerous others, right? Like, it's not a unique trope, but personally this is my favorite of those. I just really like Nicola and Simon's dynamic, and it's just cute. It's sweet. I sometimes have issues with overly saccharine depictions of children in some of these manga. Not because I don't like kids. I actually really do like kids. I've never been someone who, like, hates kids. That's not my issue. It's more so that I always feel like there's an agenda in manga when there's a super cute kid, because of how emphatically the Japanese government wants people to have children. It just feels a little bit like propaganda in order to encourage nerds to have cute babies, because that's a way that the government has figured out that they can stop the aging population and the decreasing birth rate. It may be cynical, but that's just just how I see it. But I do really like Nicola. I think she's a fun character to follow. Poor Simon is he's a bit, like, dismissive of Nicola, but he has her best intentions at heart, and when push comes to shove, he is always has her, her in mind. But yeah, I'm gonna be sad when the last volume comes out, but at the same time, again, happy. I do think that this is a series that has potential to go on for as long as it needed to, or as long as Miyanaga wanted to, but I do think that it's better that it's short and sweet. And you get enough of this world to really revel in it without feeling like it's overstayed its welcome or certain things feeling samey. I'm a fan of these kind of like fantasy travelogues, which should be no surprise considering some of the series that I follow. But yeah, this is a great one, and not one that's on a lot of people's radars, so I would encourage you to check it out if it sounds like something that you may be interested in. On to the large trim manga. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long. But first up, we have a couple volumes of another series that I really enjoy. Super happy with the ending because it recently concluded. This is one that I was following on Manga Plus. It is also available on Shonen Jump's website. Too violent for the app. Maybe too much nudity for the app, more specifically. I don't know. But this is Hell's Paradise, Volumes 4 and Volume 6. Why don't I have Volume 5? Basically because my local comic shop, I bought these at 2 separate times, and they didn't have Volume 5. They didn't have Volume 5, or I already had Volume 5. I don't know. I'm looking at my shelf, so I already had Volume 5. So I didn't need to buy it. So I was obviously filling the gap that I had between 3 and 5, and then the most recent volume, obviously, Volume 6. This series concluded in 12 or 13 volumes, and follows a bunch of death row inmates, criminals, who are given a second chance given the opportunity to earn a second chance at life if they go to this creepy island in order to get this immortality elixir, this elixir of everlasting life or whatever. Our main character, Gabimaru, is a elite assassin, ninja, and has been... So all of these criminals are paired up with an executioner from the Yamada Sword School, and so he is partnered up with I think the head of the family, Sagiri, so a girl, and quickly they realize that this island is full of dangerous things. It's not going to be a cakewalk. Not only do they have to compete against each other, and if they try to escape, then their paired executioner has been instructed to behead them immediately. So they are stuck on this island. But so it really is a fight for survival, not only against the monsters that are filling this island and the villains behind said monsters, but also amidst each other and against their executioners. It's great. I love the series so much. It has a bunch of creepy monsters. It has some really wonderful action set pieces. But ultimately, the best part of this series is the characters. I love all of the main characters. They're all wonderful. Gabimaru is a great protagonist. I just love how his relationship with Sagiri is pretty immediately shut down as, like, there's no possibility of romance there, and that stays consistent throughout the entire series. I do like the idea of platonic relationships being just as important as romantic relationships, which is not always something that's shown off in manga, especially shonen manga, that, well, between opposite genders. Obviously, friendship is like a huge element of shonen, right? But it's almost always between, characters of the same gender. Not usually if there's a female character, a girl introduced, then she's a love interest, where that's not the case in this series. And this, I would say that, like, this is a shonen series, it was on Jump Plus, but it is shades darker than your typical shonen. It's sort of more in line with something like Chainsaw Man versus, My Hero Academia or whatever. Hell's Paradise is wonderful. If I can't encourage people to watch it now, then or read it now, absolutely. Check out the anime, which has been announced. We don't know anything about it, but when it ended, the anime announcement was made. I can only hope that it's great. And hopefully it will be good, so I can push this on more people. I've already convinced a couple people to try it, and thankfully they've enjoyed it. So my recommendations aren't too off base. But yeah, Hell's Paradise was one of my favorite weekly series, and now that it's over, I was really happy with it overall. And again, it's not a super long series, and it didn't need to be. I think it was the perfect length for what it needed to be. The epilogue was wonderful, and yeah, just overall really, 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 really good. We have a couple volumes from another series that sort of fantasy, but more so a exploration of the fantasy setting through the mundane. Now this also has an anime, but I haven't watched it yet. It's on Netflix, and I believe is like a CG anime. I don't know how good it is, but I will probably get to it at some point. But this is Drifting Dragons, so we have volumes 4, which with one of my favorite characters on the front. Volume 5 and volume 7. So obviously I don't have volume 6, mainly because I think it's on back order. This follows the crew of a dragoneering airship called the Quinzaza. So in this world, dragons exist, and there are certain airships that hunt dragons because they pose a threat to some of the other airships around. For this particular airship, it's not a indiscriminate hunting of these creatures. And I would say, so I mentioned with the earlier volumes, this is one that I've followed digitally. I've been following it digitally for a very long time. And I can understand why people might not want to or don't like this series, because it's not incomprehensible to compare the dragon hunting to things like whaling, which obviously is still a very large issue in Japan. But I think it's framed a little bit more like historical whaling, when the world was killing whales for their oil to light their lamps. And in this, or at least for the main cast, the main crew that we follow, the dragons that they do hunt are then typically eaten. So this is more so than like a hunting or an action series. This is a food manga, right? Where we see how these dragons are prepared into various dishes, and the idea of the culture of hunting for food and hunting for survival, and respecting the creature that you've killed and using all of it in order to honor the animal, which obviously is something that a lot of cultures do. It's not a perfect allegory either, but it is something that does push our main cast a little bit more into the positive versus just oh yes, it's so cool that we kill these animals. Isn't it wonderful? Yay. Um, there is a little bit more nuance to it than that. But again, I do think that it's totally fine if the wailing angle is something that makes you uncomfortable. This isn't a series for everyone. But I do enjoy the way that the characters interact. I'm a fan of Delicious in Dungeon, where it's again a food manga in a fantasy setting. None of these foods are real, and they never will be real. But I like cooking manga, even if it's bizarre, out of the realm of possibility cooking manga. I like the setting. I like a lot of the series, and so I was never personally that uncomfortable with the similarities to this whaling, but I was aware of them. Like they were noticeable enough that I will always forewarn, but it wasn't something that detracted from the series, because I think contextually it still works. Anyway, regardless, this is an ongoing series. I think there's 10 or 11 volumes in Japanese so far, and this is one of the series that made the jump from digital first to print, namely because I think the manga or the anime adaptation. So I was following it from when it was being published digitally. I still follow it via Crunchyroll, and it's good. It's great. It's exactly what it's always been, and it continues to be wonderful. I'm always happy when I can sit down and kind of revel in this world and with these characters and salivate over food that doesn't exist. So I got a whole chunk of volumes from one series that I was reading digitally. I fell in love with late last year after I tried it digitally, and a lot of my friends, a lot of my mutuals had said how much they loved this series, how good it was, especially as a romance, as an adult romance, the discussion of consent and how certain things were portrayed. And so I was like, I want to try that. And I did, and I loved it. So I ordered all of what was available, plus all of what was available for pre-order. And so I got several volumes all at once this month. Although volume 1 is on back order. So I do not yet have that one in print. But this is Sweat and Soap by Kintetsu Yamada. This is volume 2. Volume 3. Whoop. Just throwing it around the place. Volume 4. And the most recent volume in English, Volume 5. So this is the story of an office worker who she's hyper aware of her perspiration, of her sweating. She was teased a lot in her youth about being smelly, and so she continuously and compulsively kind of wipes herself down, uses body sprays and soaps and deodorizers and things like that, and all of the time, constantly. And she's really enjoyed and fallen in love with one particular company's products, which coincidentally, or not coincidentally, but she respected so much that she decided to start working for them. She is in the accounting department or the finance department. And one day, while she's admiring the display of new products, their new soap line to be released, she is approached by one of her colleagues, someone else in the office who she doesn't really know or recognize, who is like adamant that he can smell something really, really nice. Like he's like, let me smell you. You smell. I need to smell you. And obviously self-conscious of her body odor, she's really upset by this, quite perturbed. But he quickly, explains that no, it's a really appealing scent to him, and he is actually one of the product developers at this company, and a lot of the products that she's enjoyed over the years have been projects that he's been working on. And so he's wanting to capture the good smell that she produces, and initially that's kind of what their relationship is, but of course it quickly turns into something a lot more, not only sexual, more romantic, but intimate, and they start dating. And so again, this is a series that establishes the couple very early on, and so the story is more so following their relationship together. And these are two adult characters, both in their first, I guess, serious relationship, with the expectation that they're probably not going to, like, there's no real, there's a lot of really wonderful communication between these characters, and matching each other's speeds, or again communicating, seeing what each of them are comfortable with. For the female characters, her first, I think, relationship ever, and for the male character, he's had a lot of relationships but nothing that's ever lasted because he has been so work focused over the course of his life. And so now they're trying to figure things out and make things work. And it's just really sweet. It's so good. It's really sweet and good and a little bit spicy. There are some, not quite safe for work scenes in this series overall. But again, that's just an extension of a healthy adult relationship. This book, the fifth book, we have our characters, introducing the boyfriend to the family, and so what the stresses of that, the planning to live together, and discussion of what that means for their future is just so good. I love it. And don't let the title scare you off. Don't, there's an element of like scent or smell fetish, but again, I think it portrays that, and the discussion of that, the acknowledgement of that as something very healthy and shouldn't be seen as gross or weird. Some people, they have fetishes and it doesn't inherently make them, wrong or a pervert or into weird stuff, as long as they communicate with their partner and that their partner is comfortable with that. And so, yeah, I think it kind of destigmatizes that, being open about your personal preferences or fetishes or whatever in a healthy relationship, and without seeming to be too like gratuitous or making it an uncomfortable thing to discuss. Sweat and Soap is so good. Volume 5 kind of made me cry a bit because of how her father, his explanation of his role in the family. Man, it's just super good. This was also a recently completed series with 10 volumes in Japan, so we are halfway through with this print edition, and again, I'm always happier when a romance series is kind of shorter, because I don't know how much you can really explore without, again, kind of falling into tired tropes, and annoying tropes, not even tired, but annoying things. Another thing I really appreciate is that there's very little miscommunication with these characters. They are very upfront and open, almost by necessity, because it's explained that the male character, he can tell when his girlfriend is hiding things because of the change in her smell. So there's no way that they can kind of avoid talking about things for too long. So, a little bit ridiculous, but still really good. I highly recommend Sweat and Soap, especially if you're wanting a romance, especially if you're wanting a romance featuring adult characters, a serious romance insofar as having that open communication, none of this, hiding things and miscommunication and romantic rivalries that are shown as really vitriolic and things like that. It's just, healthy relationships we've seen a lot of over the past year in manga, and it's a wonderful trend. I hope it continues over the course of this year. But yeah, Sweat and Soap, absolutely get on it. Next, we have a complete single volume short story collection. This is Sneeze by Naoki Urasawa, a short story collection from just collecting stories of his from several years. I wasn't I don't know. I enjoy Urasawa's work a lot, and I did like quite a few of the stories in here, but overall I just wasn't that interested or invested. I probably won't read this again. It's not something that I can see spending a lot of time in my collection. So unfortunately, and it's not to say that it's a judge of its quality, but I'm probably not going to be keeping this. It had some good ideas. I think the first and second of the short stories, the one with the guy who could control people with his mind, or control the odds with his mind, and the one about a fortune teller and a reporter were very well done. The story focusing on the two mice was pretty cute as well, or silly, childish silly. And I didn't mind the one about the band and the inspiration for their album cover art, but just generally I wasn't that super impressed with the rest of the book. And I think I say it all the time with short story collections, there's a wide variety of stories, and sometimes they can really vary wildly in quality. And for this one, it just seemed to tend to be sort of the lower quality for me, a lower end of enjoyment for me. So yeah, this one, unfortunately, out of all of the books that I got this month, considering this is the only one that really kind of didn't live up to expectations or didn't really suit me, I did very well. But this will probably be going to be donated or sold at some point. Yeah. Continuing with large trim stuff, we have recent volumes of ongoing series that I've been collecting, but only one volume of. So we have volume 9 of Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui. Obviously, continuing the fantasy culinary comedy manga about a group of adventurers who are trying to save the sister of their leader from having been eaten by the red dragon, and in order to survive the dungeon, they weren't able to really get supplies or anything before starting, so they have been eating their way through the dungeon, which has been great for the leader because he's always wanted to do that. They also picked up a dwarf called Senshi, who has been basically living off of the dungeon and its creatures for the entirety of its life. And the humor that comes out of that, obviously it's exploring different fantasy kind of dungeon crawler creatures in this mundane way, in a similar sense to what I said about Nicola traveling around the demon's world. And this is so funny. The series is so funny. Plus there's a larger mystery of what the dungeons actually are, who controls them, why the person behind the dungeons may be acting in certain ways. This volume we were introduced to this new character, who is an elf who had previously been a dungeon master of his himself. Oh my god, okay, so the funniest chapter in this volume is where the group gets attacked by succubi. And so if you're not familiar somehow with succubi, they, in folklore, and they're described in this as being demons that take on the image of what's most attractive to you, the individual who's most attractive to you, and through that is able to sap away your life force. The succubi that they run into aren't actually like true demonic succubi. They are an insect, more so like a mosquito, that in a similar sense take on an attractive image to the person and thus sucks out their life force. But oh my god, so funny. I laughed so hard that whole chapter, because Shilchuk, their half-foot or halfling party member, he's the only one who kind of knows about succubi and is warning them about how dangerous they are, and the only way to avoid, having your life sapped from you through his own painful past experiences. And almost immediately things start going wrong, and then he's like, okay, you have to be in groups, and so one person will attract the succubi and the other person kills it or stops it, so that way you'll prevent the group from having their life force sucked out and dying or whatever, becoming overly weak. And then, so he becomes kind of the one who's targeted by these succubi, and Marcielle, the elf of the group, she keeps commenting that, like, oh, why are all these succubi blondes? Like, is your wife a blonde? And he's just like, shut up. I laughed, and then when Marcielle, like, one of the succubi starts vying for her, and the character that comes out is just the gaudiest, like, Prince Charming, stupid looking elf ever, and Chilchuk's just like, oh my god, you have the worst taste. But then, of course, because of distraction, just shenanigans ensues. It's just, it's so funny. I love this series so much. It just continues to be a joy, and I don't know how much longer it's gonna run. I know the 10th volume just came out or has just been solicited for Japanese, but I wouldn't be surprised if this does wrap up in like 11 or 12 volumes. It seems to be kind of nearing the end, and I will be sad but also happy, and the fact that it's survived this long, again, not for any lack of quality, but it's kind of a premise that I feel like you might initially just think could only be interesting for a couple volumes, but it's stayed consistently funny and wonderful and intriguing the whole time. Delicious in Dungeon is brilliant, and I am never patient enough for the next volume. I always want it like immediately, especially because it usually ends on pretty excruciating cliffhangers as well. But yeah, great series. Definitely check it out. Similar vein to the last book, we also have Heterogenea Linguistical, an Introduction to Interspecies Linguistics by Salt Seno, and this is yet again kind of traveling and exploring a fantasy world through the mundane. Delicious in Dungeon is cooking, obviously. This is linguistics and communication. So we follow a university student called Hakuba who has his professor was injured during field work, and so the professor sends him to continue the research in his place. And so he is discovering about all the various new cultures and actually putting to practice the languages that he's learnt through his travels. But this isn't just normal linguistics. These are the languages of various supernatural creatures, including werewolves and lizardmen and lamia and minotaur and slimes and all sorts of things. It's so good. I love the series. I'd never heard of it prior to it being licensed, but as soon as I heard the premise, I was like, yep, I will be reading that. Thank you very much. And it's super well paired with Delicious in Dungeon. If you enjoy that, you'll probably enjoy this. I really like how much emphasis it puts on the value and importance of communication and how cultures interact and how you don't even necessarily need words for communication, like the universal feelings, the universal experiences of creatures, including humans, right? It's just so good. It's so good. It's, again, like heartwarming and sweet, but funny and just interesting. Just a really cool way to explore a setting that so typically is focused on violence or like otherness or depicting humans as antagonistic towards these like fantasy creatures. And I think it's just really cool that like there's no violence in this. None of the characters interact with the intention of like being in a war. There's no real conflict of like cultural clash. There is miscommunication or difficulties communicating because of just the physical inability to speak other languages between some species, but it's never, it's never just, oh yeah, we hate Minotaur, we hate lizardmen, and they're evil, and, we're in this big war with them. It's more so like, oh yeah, it can be hard to talk with Kraken because they can't verbalize, so we've adapted, and now we have this physical gesture, language that that makes it easier for us to communicate. And I'm like, that's really cool. I love it. Yeah, definitely check this one out. I think that it's a series that will probably appeal to a lot of people if you like this kind of low-key, again, travelogue style of exploration in a fantasy setting, and I cannot wait for more. I don't know how long the series will be. I don't think it'll be as long as Delicious in Dungeon, but we'll see. Another one of my favorite series, very different genre. This is but another Yen Press title. All the last couple have Yen Press. This one is Volume 6 of Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. This is a josei horror, supernatural horror yokai series, suspense about a innkeeper, a demonic or non-human innkeeper who has an inn that allows guests to stay, human guests to stay, in exchange for their deepest, darkest secret, because the innkeeper is very, very interested in humanity and the things they value and what might be worthy of their keeping their secret for their entire life that they never want anyone else to know. And sometimes if you don't have a secret, the innkeeper will give you one. which is also terrifying. There are 2 employees at this inn called Butterfly and Spider. They both have a pretty complicated backstory, and oh my goodness, Butterfly, I don't know how to feel because some stuff is going on with him. That's what a lot of this particular volume was focused on, Butterfly's conflict with self, as well as Spider kind of confronting something from his past and acknowledging something. There was a lot of development in this particular volume and over the last couple volumes. So initially I had expected this to be a quite episodic, chapter by chapter, like short horror self-contained series, but it has since kind of grown this larger overarching story where we do follow these characters' growth. We follow a exorcist character who is trying to put an end to the innkeeper as well, and sort of his goings on and how decisions that the innkeeper has made affects his life. It's so good. It's so good. We know, or longtime viewers know, that I am hugely a fan of yokai supernatural manga just in general, but I especially love these kind of creepy mystery horror ones. I love a lot of them, but I do think that the spooky, creepy, eerie ghost stories that can be depicted with yokai manga are just really wonderful. Some of my favorite stuff, and I really like seeing the contrast of just the complete removal from human morality and the not understanding human society that yokai presents when in conflict with, or when interacting with people and their expectations of, how you should act and how life should be. It's just really well done. I love it a lot. The artwork is also beautiful, gorgeous. I don't know. I don't think we're caught up with the manga quite yet in English. I feel like there's another volume or 2 that we're behind on, and I think this is ongoing. I don't know how long this will be, but I sure hope it'll be a while because I am into it. The covers are beautiful. I really love them, and it's just really atmospheric. I think the artwork really understands its blacks. There's so much. The atmosphere when reading really builds that tension, builds that suspense, builds that uneasiness. And so, yeah, if you're wanting kind of this creepy, but not outright like terrifying, there's no real violent gore or anything in this. It's more so that awareness of the unnatural, uncomfort, right, in this sort of story. I'm just super duper happy that we continue to get the series, and I will keep buying it whenever it's released. Another one of my favorite completed manga recently come to print, and that is Blue Flag by Kaito. This is an 8-volume series, with obviously this being volume 5. This is a teen drama, adolescence drama, romance, about a high school boy and who has feelings for a girl in his class, who has feelings for his best friend, who has feelings for him. So it's this strange love triangle, and then also the girl in the class, her best friend, has feelings for her. So there's a complicated romantic web here. Obviously queer themes, so be aware of that. And there are issues with the series. It's not perfect, but I love it so much. I care about the characters so much, and I think the execution of majority of it is done so well that I will always recommend this manga. It's yeah, this series depicts adolescence and the unsurety of growing up so well. There's a real emotional truth to this series, and the fact that it handles a lot of quite serious topics, especially for teens, so well is very commendable. I had already enjoyed Kaito's previous work, which was a sports manga, and this is quite different in, setting and genre, but all of these kids I am very invested in, and happily I can say that I was satisfied with the series overall, with the ending. Again, I know people had some issues with that, but I didn't. I was just happy that they were happy, honestly. Blue Flag. Fantastic. If you're not wanting to buy the volumes, definitely check it out on the Shonen Jump app. The whole series isn't on there, but they are adding chapters to the vault as these print volumes are being released. And with Volume 5, we are now more than 50% of the way through the series in its print release. So, yeah, I could gush about Blue Flag for ages, and in fact I did so with my good friend Ray from Whimsical Pictures on our podcast last year. We did a spotlight episode on this particular series. So if you are wanting to listen to that, feel free. It is on this channel as well as on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. The podcast is called Read Right to Left. I will say that there's spoilers and warnings for spoilers for the series. So if you are wanting to avoid spoilers entirely, maybe avoid it. But if you're someone who doesn't care or just would prefer to be forewarned about things, then hey, go straight ahead. But we do warn when it shifts from non-spoilery discussion to more involved. Anyway, Blue Flag, super wonderful. Love it a whole bunch, and I can't wait for the rest of the volumes to come out so I can have them all on my shelf. This is another rom-com. This one's a little bit more spicy. This has ecchi elements to it, definitely, or fan servicey elements to it, definitely. But I just love the characters. I think the relationship is really wonderful and sweet, and I like how the mangaka has depicted not only imposter syndrome, but the fear in adolescence of letting people down. I mean, you don't have to be an adolescent to fear letting people down, but you know what I mean. That unsurety in yourself and not having the confidence to be proud of the things you enjoy. And so this is volume 2 of My Dress Up Darling by Shinichi Fukuda. This is the story of a high school boy named Gojo who loves his family. His grandfather is a traditional Japanese doll maker, and as such he fell in love with Japanese dolls and the art of doll making very early in life, but was ridiculed pretty badly for it in childhood, so has kind of avoided talking about it since. But he has a real respect for one of the girls in his class called Marin, who is very popular, very outgoing, a little bit galley, or if that makes sense, who, she's a little bit out there, a little bit just is friends with everybody, but she's also very self-assured and really loves the stuff that she enjoys, and by extension, even the stuff that other people would judge as like nerdy or dorky or uncool, she's still adamantly, defends. And so one day Gojo has to work in the home ec department because the sewing machine that he normally makes the doll clothes out of at home has broken, so he's going to do that at school. And he runs into Marin, who is wanting to use the sewing machine for her cosplay of her favorite character from an Erg, like Saint Slippery's Academy or whatever it is. This is a very funny series, I just gotta say. I laughed super hard at a lot of the stuff in this. And impressed when she discovers that her classmate can make clothes, she asks if he can help her with her costume, because she has never, she's never cosplayed before, she's never made clothes before, and she's very obviously an amateur. So he agrees, kind of hesitantly, but does so. And then after that, they become closer friends. He stresses about, doing these things for her because she's so popular and so wonderful, and he's just kind of this, shy loner who doesn't have many friends, and he's quite self-conscious about that. And it's just, it's just really sweet. And as I said, there is kind of a fan servicey element to it, which may perhaps put some people off, but I actually didn't mind it. I as you can see, I didn't think it was like gratuitous or out of place, and I didn't think it negatively impacted the series. I think I'm not a prude. I don't really care about, boobs and butts and whatever else, unless it does negatively impact the story and sort of you lose interest or momentum in the series itself to kind of insert fan service. That's when I kind of give it a leery side eye, or if it's, just very gratuitous and basically softcore porn. But that's my that's my kind of line, and of course that's everyone's different as to what you can handle or what you prefer. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I have volume 3 on the way, I think. Have I ordered it? I feel like I ordered it. This is a book put out by Square Enix. All of the books that I've read from them have just been wonderful. They've really hit it out of the park with licensing so far, and I just, this is, for as, silly and ecchi and kind of comedic as the series can sometimes be, it's also really sweet and heartwarming, and the relationship between our two main characters is one that you really root for and that you want them to succeed at, because they're just such likable kids. These kids are so good. So My Dress Up Darling, give it a shot, even if you kind of hadn't heard of it, or if you weren't necessarily you're not necessarily a fan servicey fan, things like that. I think it does everything that it wants to do really, really well. Next, we have a single volume of a short story collection. This is of a Gekiga collection, or a Garo collection, maybe is a little bit more accurate. And this is Kuniko Sorita's The Sky is Blue with a Single Cloud. I think Sorita was the first and maybe only female artist in Garo magazine. I previously bought this book but the copy that I received from Amazon was just absolutely in terrible condition. So I read it and then returned it because it was really beat up. The spine was basically broken and had lost half of the paper. The cover was all bent up, so it wasn't, it wasn't a frivolous return. I don't really mind little dings and things from shipping. I am used to it, but it was not in good condition. But finally got my replacement copy, and I loved this book. I love this collection of short stories. Again, there's always stronger stronger stories than others in a collection like this, but man, Sorata has some really, really poignant and striking works in this. I really enjoyed this one. I didn't quite know what to expect going into it. I didn't really know anything about Sorata or her work. I had only read one of her short comics that was included in one of the Bubbles fanzines, the very first one, I think. But this absolutely blew me out of the water. Drawn and Quarterly, I mean, they're quite reliable on their Gekiga and Gara and underground or indie manga collections, and this was just really, really cool to get. And if you are interested in this era of manga, I highly recommend it, especially if you're wanting a female creator from this era of manga, and in this sort of demographic of stories, or this community of creators. This is phenomenal. Another collected single volume book. This is Jiro Taniguchi's A Journal of My Father, which is released by Fanfare Ponentmon, as is all of Taniguchi's works in English. So this was originally released in the 90s in Japanese, and if you're not familiar with Taniguchi, he is a very well-known, highly acclaimed seinen mangaka, or was. He sadly passed away a couple years ago, but this is the most recent in Ponentmon's English releases of his works. I currently own The Walking Man and A Distant Neighborhood, which personally are my favorites of his works. I also own the collaboration he did with the Louvre Gallery. But his style of work is very, maybe reflective boomer is how I would describe it. He's writing for his own era. So a lot of his stories, this as well as A Distant Neighborhood, are reflective on men's relationships with their father, and them growing up in post-war Japan comparatively to their fathers, experiencing wartime and the impact that has on their mental health and their families and relationships, and how also this depiction of reconciliation, sometimes after the fact, sometimes too late, but this understanding of a person that you in your youth couldn't understand, but now you are in a similar position at a similar age, you now have more compassion for the choices that your parents made, or parent, depending. So this is the story of a man who really became estranged from his father in his adolescence, after his childhood, and furthermore his adolescence, after the breakdown of his parents' marriage and his father's remarriage. And so he left to Tokyo, and didn't really return outside of a couple occasions, his sister's wedding, introducing his own wife to his family, and in the years since, in the 15 years since, his father has passed away, so he's returning once again to his hometown, and he's discovering his father as a new person from the perspective of his father's peers, and from outside the negative emotions that he previously held from his younger days. And it's really good. It's not a series for everyone. Again, Taniguchi I think is a little bit more suited for maybe a lot of manga readers as like dads or grandfathers. He's not exactly a contemporary writer, but I think there's always going to be an element of truth to growing up and understanding your parents, because when you're younger you kind of have this perception of your parents, and then you can get really angry when they don't fit your expectation or don't reach your expectation, or they make decisions that to you seem completely wrong or dumb, or like they're personally trying to upset you or whatever else. But once you get to that age and you become a parent, or you've gone through some more life experience, you realize how much your parent or parents made decisions that they thought would be best for you and the family and for the situation, and maybe that the situation that how you perceived it as a child was different and not quite, kids experience things in ways that are very straightforward and pure because they don't really understand the nuances of life yet. Things are quite black and white for kids. And so parents can be built up as villains or as, saints, and it isn't until much later that you are, made aware, especially if you haven't seen a parent for a long time, right? That you become more aware as to, or more empathetic to how situations got that way. And I'm not talking about straight up abusive parents. I'm more so talking about things that, like divorce and remarriage and the breakdown of family, and also the expectation of taking over a family business and things like that. Yeah. Again, this isn't maybe one for the general manga reading populace, and I would also say it's probably not the best introduction to Taniguchi's work, but it was a solid volume, and it was very good for what it was. It was exactly sort of what I expect from Taniguchi at this point. Next, we have the recent release from one of my favorite small press publishers of manga and comics, but manga, full stop. I love them. One of their recent releases, Ripples by Hagiwara Ray. This has been put out by Glacier Bay Books, and this is such a beautiful release, such high quality. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to emphasize how nice this book is, the quality of the paper. But this is basically about a young woman who maybe is the last person on Earth, and her communication with, her searching for communication and her discussions with a campfire or a little flame, and it's so good. I loved this. They also put out a limited edition Riso print version of this, which I'm kind of tempted to get, but then I say to myself, no, you already bought this one. you don't need the other one, but I kind of feel like I do need it. Ripples was wonderful. Quite speculative and a little bit, on that edge of what is humanity, what is human connection, and what do we, how do we survive in a world comprised completely of ourselves? How does the mind handle isolation and solidarity? I loved it. It was super duper good, and I was super happy to finally receive it. It was one that I was excited for from the time that they announced it, and when pre-orders were up, I bought it immediately, and that's kind of been the case with a majority of Glacier Bay Books' stuff. I've bought all of their print stuff so far, and I just continue to enjoy each and every one of them. But again, this is, as a small press publisher, they are very focused on their particular audience. This isn't, and never was, meant to be a series or a book that appealed to the general populace. I think this is more so for avant-garde or indie small press, self-published comics creators or fans of those things. And so I just I'm just really happy that the manga community, the manga market, has diversified so much, that publishers like Glacier Bay, like Iridori, like Starfruit Books have been able to, I guess, thrive and support themselves and see so much positivity and so many people engaging with their work, that we are seeing more and more titles coming out from them. Because it's as wonderful as the general publishing industry is, or not wonderful the industry, but like as nice as it is to have all these big publishers that put out all the major popular hits, as well as some like lesser known but still kind of mainstream titles, seeing more independent small publishers or artists that don't have the support of a Japanese publisher, that don't have the same I guess framework around them, that would allow them to be licensed in more conventional ways, make the transition to English via publishing houses like Glacier Bay. And Ripples was wonderful. I cannot wait for their next book. They haven't announced one yet, I don't think. They've hinted at it. But I'm so excited. Finally, for the quote-unquote normal manga, you may have noticed that in the background, my picture has changed. And that is because I received this print, this Medusa print, along with another Glacier Bay book that, again, I was super excited for, pre-ordered immediately. That being Leiolia, Volume 2. This is a collection of single, one-shot stories from a whole bunch of different creators, as you can see here. And oh my goodness, I am in love. I literally am in love. There's so many of these were so good. I mean, all of them were good, but so many of these just were amazing. Some of my favorites included Lisa's Left Hand, which was about a little girl and a boy who could read people's minds. There's a story about this one that's upside down because you read it opposite to normal Japanese manga. And that, I think that was a pretty cool way to keep the flow and publish it in the correct reading order. And as you can tell as well, like there's a huge variation of art styles and mediums as well, art mediums. This one about the boy who travels in his dreams with his cat. And I loved that one. This one as well, that Haunted, where a woman keeps visiting the the tunnel that one of her friends died in order to talk to her ghost. And this one where a girl kind of runs away with a stranger in a diner after her mother ignores her. That was super good. This one about computer graphics and what is existing, maybe. Oh my goodness. I cannot tell you how exciting it was to receive this book. This one as well. The Earthly Stars in the Palm of Your Hands, where a cityscape in a box. That's just magical. That is incredible. And there's so much creativity and so much like interesting parts to this manga, and this one as well. I love this one where a girl keeps, like, her spirit keeps slipping out, and some of her classmates can see that happening, but she's so spiritually unaware or spiritually obtuse that she doesn't notice. And so there's just copies of her ghost everywhere, all around town, because it just continues to slip out. I love this book so much, and I really hope, and I feel like this isn't an absurd thing to hope that we do get a third volume of this. The choices that the staff make for compiling these books are wonderful. I think there's so much incredibly cool, incredibly interesting, funny, heartwarming, introspective, maybe sometimes a little bit depressing comics across these two Glaiolia volumes that I just it honestly is some of the most exciting and experimental stuff that we see in manga, and I just hope to continue to support this publisher and all of their programs and things that they want to do, because it's, as I said with Ripples, it's just really nice to see more diversity in publishing. And although I don't know how many people bought the first volume of Glaiolia. You can actually get it digitally now. I don't know if it's getting a second print run, but you can get it digitally, and you owe it to yourself to read some of these, honestly. Like, if you are a fan of comics, if you're a fan of art and art as an expression, and as an exercise in exploring humanity and emotionality, and how we exist, then this is some of the best that I've come across, honestly. There's just so much to love with this book. I was so happy that there was an option to get the print for this cover, because as soon as I saw it, I fell in love with this image as well, the Medusa. Everything about this book was wonderful. And I can only hope to continue to support this series and, again, the any other books that Glacier Bay wants to put out, because there's just something really encouraging in having voices outside of the mainstream, and having creators unshackled from editorial constraints, and being able to tell a story in the exact way that they want to, in a medium or a format that they want to, without having to bend to a publisher or a syndicated demanding schedule, and having to necessarily appeal to a wide demographic or genre audience. It's just, you can feel, I think there's an authenticity to when a creator is making something for themselves and sharing that with other people, rather than creating a product and sharing that with other people and hoping other people like that. It's, yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm just so glad that we've seen this book, and that assumingly the first book did well enough that there was enough demand for more of this, because I want everyone to read it. If it sounds like something you'd be interested in, you do yourself the favor and invest. So we have a couple of BL manga, the first one being a debut from a creator that I really enjoy and was highly anticipating this book, and that is Birds of Shangri-La by Ranmaru Zarya. This is a book that definitely earns its explicit rating logo, so I will I will flip through it off camera, because who knows what might come up. But Zarya, beautiful art style, honestly, love it. But this is the story of a straight man named Apollo who decides to take a job on this tropical island paradise, where he's working for a brothel that contains only male workers, sex workers, and he's not going to be one of the boys in this club. He is instead been hired to be a fluffer, which basically means that he has been hired to prepare these men for their clients. So that means lubrication, stretching, etc., getting them in the mood, and then basically just bouncing them off to whomever the client may be. Typically some man, right, who has come for a good time. So Apollo has his own reasons for needing money, which is why he took this job. It's very high pay. It also is quite relaxed with vacation time, and everyone's encouraged to, be themselves and to be happy and healthy and whatever else. But in order to train him up, the owner has assigned Apollo to one of the popular boys in this club called Phi, I think. Phi. But there's one rule between the birds of the Shangri-La and the fluffers, and that is you're not allowed to give the birds an orgasm, because that's kind of preemptively not gonna help anyone. 2, no penetration when you're preparing these birds, and 3, no falling in love. But I'm sure that rules will be bent and broken. If we know anything about Zarya. So there is a little bit of a plot going on. There is, we do learn about why Apollo is in this situation, why he's kind of desperate and doesn't mind, involving himself in this, and why he's kind of left his past behind. But ultimately, like with all of Zarya's manga, whether it be Coyote or Liquor and Cigarettes or Void, all of which are great, all of which I own in some iteration, there's spiciness, right? This is her stuff is definitely on the more explicit, erotic side, and this is no exception. No exception at all. I kind of think that if you are a fan of Zarya, you know what you're getting into. If you're... just be aware that it is very explicit, kind of from the get-go. Zarya's not an artist. This isn't a Sublime book that just has the explicit content logo on there because it's a BL and the characters like hold hands and kiss each other one time. This has got a lot of like in your face, these characters are having sex and they're enjoying it, and happening a lot of the time. So yeah, again, forewarning, that's a plus for some people, minus for other people. I'm absolutely not complaining about it. This was highly anticipated for me to pick up because, as I said, I enjoy Zarya's other works. And, sometimes you just gotta be horny on main. So if it sounds like your thing, check it out. It's very, very good at what it does. It absolutely delivers on what it promises, and I am looking forward to Volume 2. The other BL that I got for this month is a single volume, one that I had, was keeping an eye on, but I heard really good things about. I heard really good reviews from some friends, and this is another one that is explicit, so although it's a lot less sex than the other one, but that's not to say that there's no sex. There is several scenes of intimacy in this book, so again. And also, this one is notable in that, at least in later chapters, the sex is uncensored, which longtime BL fans know is quite rare. So this is Secret XXX or Secret XXX by Meguru Hinohara. This is the story of a young guy, college student, who his family, I think his father's a zookeeper, his mother is the zoo veterinarian, so he's always had a lot of animals around, and especially he's had a lot of carnivores around, which kind of traumatized him, so he absolutely loves herbivores, and more specifically bunnies. He loves bunnies, but unfortunately he has allergy to bunnies and bunny fur, or at least he believes he does. And so he's never been allowed to have a rabbit or a bunny for himself. But through circumstance, through, desperation almost, he ends up working at a bunny, I guess, maybe it's a cafe, or maybe it's just a sanctuary shop, rabbit shop, I don't know. All they have is bunnies. And he not only loves all of the little baby bunnies and rabbits there, but he's also head over heels for one of the workers. So he's trying to hide his allergy from this incredibly handsome man who he has grown close to through, constantly visiting. And soon they discover, then there's a confession, and, things kind of go from there. It's quite sweet. I really liked this one. I think the couple was really lovely. This also has a 2-volume spin-off series featuring the brothers of both of these characters. You know, it's fun, it's spicy, it's funny. Both of the characters are pretty likable. If I could readjust the camera, that would be helpful. And I think just generally it's a good time. Also, I really like the art style. This was a sweet, nice little one and done volume, and I will definitely be picking up the sequel spin-off, because the brother, we're introduced to both brothers in this book, and their personalities are very different from our protagonists of this, but I also feel like they are maybe more interesting, and thus more interesting insofar as they have a lot more to overcome. Maybe they have a lot more of an opposites personality, and thus make a more compelling story to follow for longer. Not that they're better than this couple, I don't know, I haven't read it. But yeah, I am hoping to pick up Therapy Game, which is the spin-off, at some point in the near future. And I hope we see more of Hinohara's work, if she has any, because this was really good, and I liked it immensely. So good job, Sublime. Good job, Sublime. Thanks for always giving me my quality boys love. The odd little things that I got from this month as well. So I didn't show it off in my anime haul because I didn't actually keep it. I gave the set to my sister because I didn't really actually like the anime adaptation, but I bought the limited edition of it because it came with a booklet that included like DVD or Blu-ray exclusive manga, and I love the manga of this series, so I was a crazy person. Well, it was on sale. It was a Sentai sale item, so I bought it. It was incredibly, disgustingly cheap. I asked my sister, do you want the series? Because we watched it together. She liked it a whole lot because she hadn't read the manga, so she didn't have anything to compare it to. And she said, yes, absolutely. And I said, I bought it for the booklet. Can I have the booklet? No problem. Right, so this is the special booklet from Devil's Line. So the first half has, episode summaries and interviews and character descriptions and whatever else, but the second half has manga, which is kind of a bunch of sequel, prequel, short story stuff, and I read it and I got emotional. Yes, we know that I love Devil's Line. It shouldn't necessarily be a surprise, but I'm really glad that I did pick it up, because I do think that the 3 or 4 little short comics included in this booklet were pretty cool additions, especially because they're not included in the manga release at all in Japan or in English, so it's just nice to have. It's just a nice little addition to completing my Devil's Line collection, and thus I can say that I have for the most part. And so yeah, I mean, is this really that surprising for me? Maybe not. We know the lengths that I go to for my favorite series. It's a problem, but I'm also not gonna fix my behavior. But I mean, maybe for those who want to do a similar thing, when I bought the set, it was maybe $10 or whatever, and the fact that I was able to gift it to someone who did enjoy the show and also didn't care if there was a booklet included in it or not, then I don't really see it as like a waste of money or anything like that. Two people benefited from it, so that's a net positive in my eyes. Okay, on to the light novels, and I'm sorry, but there's a lot of these as well. It's just been a lot of stuff this month. And first off, we have a older light novel, especially. When did this come out? This came out in 2008, so this is over a decade old. And this is the Nisio-Isen spin-off manga franchise novel for Holic, another Holic, obviously written by Nisio-Isen, and with some illustrations, chapter illustrations, and obviously the premise from Clamp. So this, if you're not familiar with Holic, it's one of Clamp's more popular series. Personally, my favorite. I haven't even read it. I've just watched the show, but having read some of Clamp's other stuff, Holic is definitely my favorite. And this Holic follows Watanuki, a high school boy who can see spirits, ghosts, monsters, whatever you want to call them. And so he becomes a part-timer for a dimensional witch named Yuko, in order to have a fair price for her helping him, like fixing his eyes, basically. So that's the general premise of the series. Is typically Watanuki getting involved in some sort of supernatural shenanigans and learning a moral and or getting supernatural kind of perspective of stuff. And I'm biased because I enjoy yokai series and stuff like that, and truly this Clamp series was the one that was made to appeal to me. But this series in Nisio-Isen style is very much focused on dialogue, which is quite, like, Watanuki is definitely a wordy, complainy, kind of quick to anger and fluster character. It's not a bad thing. And I think that Nisio-Isen was able to capture Watanuki's personality, and also the kind of sarcasm and quick wit between Watanuki and Yuko. I think that's done very, very well, and it suits. I think Nisio-Isen was the smart choice to write this novel. And I will say that it was interesting, having read this novel, that there actually wasn't a huge amount of supernatural elements in this, and that's important because it's emphasizing to Watanuki that just because people have problems in their life doesn't mean that it's all from some outside source. Sometimes people cause their own problems, and thus they have to take responsibility for that. And I think it was just done really well. It's a weird book. Obviously, this is an older light novel, so the translation, it's not, like, it's a good translation, it's readable English and all of that, but it has a lot of footnotes and author notes, or translator notes, I should say, because there's certain things. So for those who aren't aware, Nisio-Isen has a lot of wordplay, and I think kind of considers himself very clever in how he chooses his words and how his characters kind of twist meanings of words, and it's something that is in literally every one of his series, right? And because of that, it can be very hard to translate. Prior to Vertical publishing them or licensing them, it was thought that Monogatari could never be translated, which is absurd, but there's just so many puns that are rooted in, like, kanji explanation and synonyms and things like that, that it is a difficult task to get the wit and wordplay and maintain comedy whilst also making the joke understandable, or the wordplay understandable for English readers. And I think that this being so early, that it was harder for, or the translator just didn't really know how to do that, or if they wanted to do that. But there's some things in this that I'm like, you could have just translated that. I said it in my weekly wrap-up video when I talked about this book, that there's a point where Watanuki's like, oh, is this a such and such, like, Japanese name for a folk tale? And I was like, does he mean the Straw Millionaire, like, folklore? And he did. And the footnote was like, oh yes, this is a story of a person who used trades from thing to get great wealth. And I was like, why couldn't you just say Straw Millionaire? Then it might not have been as widespread, but it maybe have been like, there's no reason to keep it in Japanese. You can still even have the exact same footnote, but you don't have to keep it in Japanese. I don't know, it just frustrated me. It was just like a weird choice. But overall, it was a solid book. Yeah, again, one of the few franchise novels that we have from Nisio Isin. I don't know how many franchise novels Nisio Isin has done, but also one of the first Nisio Isin books we ever got in English. Nowadays, obviously, he's a lot more popular. We have a lot more of his novels available, and thankfully they are translated with a little more nuance and care and purpose, maybe. Yeah, but I enjoyed this, and I'm glad that I finally got it, because it was a book that I wanted to try for a very long time. Next, we have volume 3 of part 2 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'll Do Anything to Become a Librarian. Part 2, Apprentice Shrine Maiden, arc by Miya Kazuki. So this is the 7th volume overall. I don't really remember. This is this is one of my favorite J-Novel Club titles. I'm really happy that we are getting this series in print. I follow it via J-Novels subscription service or whatever, membership, but I always fall behind on it. I just kind of have to wait until more volumes are released, or it's one of the spotlight series for the month, so I can catch up. But Ascendance of a Bookworm is an isekai about a young woman from Japan who's just obsessed with books and reading, and who dies after being crushed by her bookshelf, her books and her bookshelf during a earthquake or something. I don't really remember. But is reincarnated in a fantasy world as a sickly young girl named Myne, M-Y-N-E in this novelization, but I've seen M-A-I-N in the manga and also in the anime subtitles, so it's a bit, all over the place as to what is standard. But regardless, I've said before that I'm not really a fan of current isekai, but this one I love. I love the series so much, and this is the penultimate volume for this arc. I've yet to start the 3rd arc. I think there's 8 or 9 arcs altogether, and there's more and more volumes per arc. But this is truly like one of the really interesting explorations of fantasy worlds and of culture and class separation and magic integration, and a lot of this series is focused on Myne trying to popularize publishing and reading amongst the people, because she's reincarnated in this world where books aren't accessible for everyday people, which is obviously a nightmare for her because in her last life, that was all she cared about. But she has grown a lot. She's still working fastidiously towards her goal of being a librarian and publishing having as many books being published as possible, but she does actually care about a lot of the people around her. She's hoping to cause change and improve people's lives, and has very clearly done so over the course of the series. I love this series so much. I, again, recommend the anime for this series. It adapts the first arc plus... No, just the first arc? And this half of the second arc. So halfway, the first 2 books of this arc. There's 2 seasons, I don't really remember exactly where it stops, but, oh boy. Yeah, I hope we see more seasons of this because it is a good series. This is one of those light novels that started as a web novel, and later got picked up for publishing, and it is, in my opinion, one of the strong, I think it does kind of prove itself as good as a novel that went through a more traditional publishing process, because although it's long, although it does kind of have some elements that do show that it was a self-published online work, overall it has really strong writing, really strong themes, really clear character arcs and character growth and plot progression. It's just overall and it doesn't feel like super self-inserty. It doesn't feel like it's relying on a lot of the really tired tropes of the genre, and just, yeah, generally it's a great time. And mine is she's not initially likable, but you definitely grow more and more fond of her over time, and I appreciate that. I think, again, it just shows how much she's changed from this kind of selfish, self-occupied person or preoccupied person into someone who is more aware and involved in other people's lives and the betterment of other people's lives. And it's just really good. Sentence of a Bookworm is, if you're not a fan of isekai, this is probably one of the isekai that I would recommend, because it's not like a lot of the male-dominated wish fulfillment stuff that we typically see being licensed and published. And one day, hopefully, we will see 12 Kingdoms. I will keep putting that out into the universe until my wishes come true, because I want that. Because between that and this, my life will be satisfied. And J.K. Haru. Those three are the only isekai I need, to be honest. And I don't know when the next volume of this is set to be released, but I'm sure soonish. So we have 2 volumes from a single series, which actually means that I've completed this series, because I did have a gap for a long time, and it means I can actually read this series. I've only read 1 volume. Why did I buy all of it? Because I love the author and I knew that I would enjoy it, and I've watched the anime, so again, I know that I'm going to like the story. But this is volume 10 and volume 11 of Durarara by Narita Ryogo. Oh my goodness. Narita's modern day, character bash, character celebration. Durarara follows 1,000,000 characters, like its sister series Bakuno does, in modern day Ikebukuro, or current day Ikebukuro. So there's 1,000,000 plot threads bouncing around, but basically there's a whole bunch of conflicts, personal conflicts going on in Ikebukuro, a whole bunch of different groups, mainly including a high school boy called Mikado, Ryugamine Mikado, who has moved from the country to the city. He reunites with his best friend, Kida Masami, who, in the time since he's seen him, got involved and has since left a color gang called the Yellow Scarves. They also have a third friend, Honori Sunohara, who is a quiet and buxom young woman, a teenage girl who has her own secrets, namely that she has possession of a very, very persuasive sword. Amidst these teens, we also have, and I guess the main character is Celti, who is a Dullahan, who is also a motorcycle delivery woman, but she has come to Japan in search of her head because someone stole her head. She's looking for it, and she stays with her longtime boyfriend, partner, someone, Shinra, who is a underground doctor, works for, shady types who can't go to a regular hospital. Then we also have Shizuo, the city's strongest man, very quick to anger, but generally as just a sweetheart, hates violence. And then also the puppeteer behind the scenes, pulling strings, Izaya Orihara, who is an information broker and absolutely loves to upset Shizuo, and is kind of like, I'm pretty sure Shinya and Shizuo and Izaya all went to high school together, or they've known each other a long time, so they've been aggravating each other for a long time. And there's just a billion other characters as well, but those are kind of the main characters. And it's just the crazy wild mystery situations of these people in Ikebukuro. It's a good time, and Dora was certainly the more popular of Narita's works when adapted to anime. It's also had a complete anime adaptation versus Bakuno, mainly because this one's finished. Bakuno's still ongoing. But yeah, so I already owned 1 to 9 plus 12 and 13, which is the last one for the main series. And so I got these, and now I'm needing to pick up Dora SH, which is the spin-off sequel. I don't quite know, I'm not entirely sure, but was recently licensed and solicited by Yen Press, or Yen On, whichever, split the difference. But yeah, happy to finally finish this one. It's been a long time. I've been meaning to get these volumes for ages, just didn't get around to it till this month. Well, last month, but till recently. Also have some more Nisio-isen, because I managed to get the season 2 box set for Monogatari, which contains, as you can see, 6 books, including Neko Monogatari White, Kabuki Monogatari, Hana Monogatari, Otori Monogatari, Oni Monogatari, and Koi Monogatari. I say that 5 times fast. And these are all of the books that make up the second season of this series, and if you watch the anime, all of those were literally the second season of the show. Technically third, because they broke up Baka Monogatari and Nisei Monogatari, whereas they're kind of grouped together in novels, as well as Kisa Monogatari. But with the first box set recently announced for another reprint, plus the final season box set announced, I decided to finally get these because, as much as Nisio can be a little bit too clever for his own good, I do enjoy his novels, and this is by far, his most well-known work. I really enjoy Monogatari as well. Like, I like the series a lot, and I like a lot of these. I think this part of the story does grow the characters a lot, especially specifically Otori Monogatari and Oni Monogatari. Those two. I mean, but even Neko Monogatari White and Kabuki Monogatari. Honestly, like all of them. I think maybe I'm just like a hostage at this point to Monogatari, but I do think that there's a lot of good character growth over the course of the series, and although I haven't yet read these novels, I don't think that, the anime did something hugely drastic to change the story, that the good things about the show wouldn't also be the good things about the novel. So I still need to read. I've read Kizu Monogatari, which I loved. That's a wonderful standalone book just on its own. Even if you don't want to dive into all of the rest of Monogatari, that one is worth a read just by itself. But I do need to read Baka Monogatari and Nisei Monogatari and Neko Monogatari Black before I dive into this box set in particular. And then, of course, I can, after that, with the final box set, go into Owari Monogatari and Koyomi Monogatari and Zoku Owari Monogatari, because they're all great. I'm caught up on the anime, so like I know, and Suki Monogatari as well. That's the other one that's in that set. So happy to have this. I wasn't sure if I was going to get the box sets, considering that I'd missed out twice on the first box set. I just, I was lazy and didn't order it when I should have. But again, now that it's been announced for a reprint, it does mean that I'll be able to have the complete set of all of the box sets at some point. Although, of course, Nisio is still writing Monogatari, technically. He's started the monster arc, which will be interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to these eventually, not immediately. We have a franchise novel, and in fact one that I mentioned earlier in this video, and if you can remember from early in this video, then congratulations, because I can barely do that. And I haven't read this one yet, but this is Bloom Into You, Volume 1, regarding Saiki Sayaka. This is the spin-off light novel focusing obviously on Saiki Sayaka in her youth, who is a major supporting character in the original Bloom Into You manga. I have heard nothing but good things about this series, so I am super duper excited to get into it. I also, as I mentioned before, love the manga. It's one of my favorite Yuri titles, and once I finish the manga, I think I will start the novels after that, just because I don't want to be jumping around too much. Or I might even just wait until I think it's a 3-volume series, until the last volume comes out before I start getting into this one. But yeah, this was on sale, I think during Black Friday sales? I don't quite remember. But yeah, if that gives you any indication of like how long sometimes postage can take to get to me, yeah. And of course the pandemic doesn't help anything in that regard. But Bloom Into You regarding Saiki Sayaka, really happy to have it, and I'm sure I will enjoy it once I actually start reading. Of course, if you are wanting to hear my thoughts on those and all of the books, or any books that I will be reading or am currently reading, I do live stream about it at the end of the week, every week so far, except for one week, but then I caught up, so it's fine. And I do that on a regular basis, so I'm sure you will hear my thoughts about it at some point in the near future. Another Yuri light novel, and another light novel I haven't yet got to, unfortunately, and this is Inori's I'm in Love with the Villainess, with Hanagata illustrating. This is an, I think, ongoing Yuri light novel. I presume about a isekai-esque sent to an otome game setting a la Baccarina, a la, well, a lot of the shoujo light novels that we are seeing currently, where, and I literally don't know anything about this, but I presume it's a Yuri light novel about a girl who dies and is sent to her favorite otome game as the villainess, and is trying to change her fate. And along the way, or no, if I'm in love with the villainess, maybe she's the protagonist, and maybe she's just a little bit gay and preferred the villainess of the series more than the boys, and so now is trying to seduce the what would normally be the romantic rival. I don't know. That's just my informed guess. But again, this is a series that I've heard a lot of good things about, and I'm really happy that we're getting more Yuri light novels. It's something that has been a really positive trend over the last year, and I like to support that. Finally, oh my goodness, if you've made it this far, congratulations. We have the last light novel, and a little bit different genre, but similar to the last ones. I have a BL light novel with Yes, No, or Maybe. This is by Michi Ichiho, the first in a 3-volume series. And this one is about a news presenter called Kei, who is he's like perfect Mr. Personality, very affable, kind, handsome, always eats right, always acts correctly, polite, always kind to everyone, including all the staff that are like beneath him and all of this. But in his mind, he's a two-faced bitch. And so he's constantly like mentally chastising people and upset and yelling at them, but he doesn't want to break the illusion of being Mr. Perfect, so he just contains himself. But as soon as he gets home, he's putting on those sweats and eating the worst food, like deep fried, cheap, shitty, no nutritional meals, and just working to keep his perfect image immaculate. So he constantly rewatches all of the other news presenters' reports every night, and tries to be perfect about it, right? One day he's put in charge of a story. The studio is wanting a new, they're rebooting the whole channel or whatever, and they want a new animated intro to the news segment, and in preparation for that, or to build hype for that, they are doing like a human interest piece where Kei will be interviewing and reporting on the process of this animation. So he is sent to meet this award-winning stop-motion artist director who's very popular, and their first initial meeting doesn't go super well, but so he's met this guy and is introduced to what he does, his industry, his job, and the ins and outs of stop motion. Anyway, that night he's off going home after getting his cheap meal of deliciously terrible for you food, and he's not paying attention, and he runs right into a cyclist. But lo and behold, the cyclist, who he has injured himself and is complaining, and he doesn't even apologize to, is this stop motion animator that he met earlier in the day / week. And he kind of gets dragged back to this guy's studio, because he's demanding that he helps him with the stop motion, in painting some of the little figures, because he's hurt his wrist and he can't do it himself. And thus, this weird kind of balancing act between his two selves starts, where he doesn't want this animator to recognize that he's the same reporter who's, interviewing him constantly, because, he doesn't want anyone to know his secret. But then quickly they become, they're never sweet to each other, but they become more comfortable with each other. He starts to go over and hang out with him of his own volition, far past the time when, the other guy's wrist has healed up, and, things happen, and then it's revealed that, that both guys that this animator has met are the same guy, and that, they fall in love. It's a relationship. It's funny. It's quite a good, solid story, and I do like the premise of it, and I do think it's done quite naturally, and it is funny because Kei is literally he's unlikable initially, and he's definitely kind of narcissistic and just an asshole, right? But over time you can see him not only become a better person and improve, but you can recognize that his bullheadedness, his snobbishness, his, bad attitude isn't inherently wrong, and also it's not inherently, it's always kind of aimed at the right person. He's never, blaming people who are, someone might immediately inconvenience him, but, he also can recognize that it's very often not that person's fault. It's because they're overworked, or, they've been given a task that they just literally can't handle, and thus he's blaming, the people in charge, the actual bad guys, the corporates, which is great. That's a good thing. And it's a fun time. It's not anything groundbreaking, and also I will say that this isn't the relationship between the two. You gotta be someone who enjoys tsunderes and not volatile relationships, but couples who bicker and aren't super lovey-dovey, or whispering sweet nothings to each other. It's not one of those. These two get on each other's nerves and argue and, piss each other off purposefully, and that's part of how their relationship works. And if that's something, if that's a relationship dynamic you're not into, then this, again, isn't for you. But it was fun. I would be interested in seeing where it goes with subsequent volumes, whether it focuses on these two or side characters. I don't know. But yeah, and I also, this is the only, recent license of a BL novel, aside from, because Fukuda has some micro novels that they have on their service, which is really exciting and cool. And way back in the day, June and DMP, used to license and release BL light novels. Holy moly, that took 400 years, but we've made it to the end. If you survive that, oh my goodness. hopefully next month won't be nearly as long. So many books to talk about, and so many other things to talk about too. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of the series that I picked up this month. Light novels, manga, figures as well, art books. So much stuff. And of course, as always, I have already posted my anime pickups for this month as well. So if you're interested in that, you can watch that one too. Comment and let me know your thoughts. I love reading your comments, and you can also always follow me on my Twitter account at collectinggee. It's linked below. That's probably the best way to get in contact with me immediately. And be sure to also, if you're interested, follow the podcast that I host with my good friend Ray from Whimsical Pictures called Read Right to Left. That's available both on my channel. So if you're subscribed, I'm sure you've seen it before in the past, as well as on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, etc. Like really, majority of the podcasting platforms we are on. But yeah, I need to rest my voice now. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the month. Stay safe, stay healthy, look after each other, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.